The whiskey burns like holy water going down. The good kind. The kind that scars your throat on the way to your gut. The kind Malachi used to keep locked in that oak cabinet with the iron padlock. Not that it stopped me. Nothing stops me anymore. I should start at the beginning. But which beginning? The night I watched my parents die? The day I killed my first demon? Or the moment I realized I was becoming the very thing I'd sworn to destroy? Fuck it. Let's start with the blood. It's always about the blood. The night. The candles died. I was 12 years old when I learned that hell isn't a place you go. It's something that comes to you. The rectory smelled of beeswax and my mother's rosewater perfume that night. She'd insisted we come for the special All Hallows Eve blessing. Dad had rolled his eyes, the skeptic journalist humoring his devout wife. But even he couldn't deny the way the air had grown heavier these past months. The way the neighborhood dogs wouldn't stop howling after midnight. Father Mathis greeted us at the door. Something was wrong. I saw it in the way his smile stretched, just a hair too wide. In the way his fingers, always so precise during Mass, twitched against the doorframe like spiders testing a web. "Vera," he said, and his voice was wrong too, like two people speaking through the same throat. "What big eyes you have." The last candle guttered out at 11:07 p.m. I remember because I just looked at my father's pocket watch, the silver one Grandpa gave him. I remember thinking how strange it was that the second hand had stopped moving. Then the screaming started. Not my father's, though God knows he had reason to scream when the thing wearing Father Mathis's skin peeled him open like a Christmas present. No, the worst sound was my mother's silence as she knelt on the hardwood, her lips moving in frantic prayer while crimson petals bloomed across her white blouse. I hid in the hall closet, the one where Father Mathis kept the spare vestments. The wool smelled of mothballs and something darker, something that made my teeth ache. Through the slats, I watched the demon work. It wasn't the blood that haunts me, though there was plenty, pooling thick around my father's twitching fingers. It wasn't even the wet, clicking sounds as the thing that wasn't Father Mathis explored my father's rib cage with two long fingers. It was the moment it turned its head. 1 second, it was crouched over my father's body. The next, its chin touched its shoulder blade, with a sound like popcorn kernels bursting. Those eyes, black as spoiled ink, with pinpricks of light deep inside, like stars viewed through a keyhole, locked onto mine. "Little shadow," it whispered in my mother's voice, "you'll do great things." Then it inhaled, not like a person breathes, like a black hole consuming light. The candles didn't just go out, their flames stretched toward it, sucked into that impossible mouth before vanishing with tiny, shrieking pops. The dark that followed wasn't natural. It pressed against my skin like oily water. I felt, rather than saw, the demon lean close, smelled the rot and roses on its breath as it whispered, "Tell them it was a gas leak." When the police found me 6 hours later, I was curled in the closet, perfectly dry, clutching my father's stopped watch. They called me lucky. They lied. The asylum years. St. Ignatius' home for troubled girls smelled of bleach and lies. The nuns called it a sanctuary. The doctors called it treatment. The other girls, the ones who lasted more than a month, called it the screaming room after what happened to Jessica Cho when she claimed the Virgin Mary spoke to her through the faucets. I lasted 3 years, long enough to learn 3 vital truths. Holy water burns just as well as acid if you concentrate it properly. The best places to hide sharp objects are where they expect you to put them. Demons always lie with the truth. Father, Malachi found me during my 4th winter. I was 15 by then, though the record still said 13. They'd stopped correcting my age after I broke Nurse Ratchet's nose with a dinner tray. "You're a Kaine," he said, as if that explained why he dragged me from solitary confinement to his private office, as if that justified the iron shackles around my wrists. "Your blood's worth more than gold." He showed me the photographs first. My great-great-great-grandmother Lillian, standing before Rouen Cathedral in 1604, her nun's habit starched white, her smile sharp as the bone dagger at her belt. The same woman 6 months later, belly swollen, eyes black as she stood over a mass grave. "Your ancestor didn't just fight demons," Malachi said, pressing a yellow document into my hands. The Latin was faded, but I caught the words dantalion and sanguinis vinculum, blood binding. She made a deal. The room tilted. The shackles bit into my wrists as I realized the Kaines weren't hunters. We were cages. The first kill. Sophie smelled of peppermint and rotting meat. I'd know that scent anywhere now. The cloying sweetness masking the corruption beneath. But that night, in the Vermont safe house, it just made me think of Christmas, of better times. My cousin sat too still on the motel bed. Her pupils weren't round anymore, but hexagonal like a fly's. When she smiled, her lips split at the corners. "Vera," she crooned in a voice that wasn't hers. "Did Malachi tell you what Grandma did to your brother?" The bone dagger trembled in my hand. Malachi had given it to me an hour earlier, its hilt carved from what he claimed was Lillian's own femur. "Don't listen," he warned from the doorway. His shotgun was loaded with silver and salt, but his fingers didn't tense on the trigger. This was my test. It'll lie with truth. Sophie, the thing wearing Sophie, laughed, a wet, gurgling sound like water draining from a tub. "Ask him why your family portrait has 3 children," it whispered, leaning forward until I could see the tiny hands swimming in the black pools of its eyes. "Ask him what happened to—" The dagger went in through her left eye, easier than I expected. The scream that followed wasn't human, wasn't even animal. It was the sound of old wood splitting, of ice cracking over deep water. Sophie's body convulsed, her fingers clawing at my wrists as black ichor poured from her nose, her mouth, the gaping wound in her eye socket. Then the walls breathed. I stumbled back as the flowered wallpaper bulged outward, as something beneath the surface pressed against the thin material like a child testing plastic wrap. The stench of rotting meat intensified as Sophie's blood, black and thick as motor oil, snaked up my arm in living tendrils. Malachi didn't move to help, just watched as I fell to my knees, as my reflection in the motel mirror smiled with too many teeth and waved with fingers that weren't mine. When it was over, when Sophie's corpse stopped twitching and the wall stilled, he handed me a chipped mug filled with foul-smelling liquid. "Drink," he ordered. "Her ashes and holy water. It'll bind the demon's essence to yours." I vomited for 3 days afterward. On the 4th morning, I caught my reflection winking at me. Malachi called it a successful initiation. I called it the beginning of the end. The hollowing. The tattoos came later. Enochian wards carved into my skin, with a silver needle and ink mixed with my own blood. Malachi did the first ones himself, a twisting vine of sacred text up my left arm that burned like hellfire as it healed. "Every demon you kill makes you stronger," he explained, wiping the blood from his hands. "And every kill brings you one step closer to becoming what you hunt." I didn't understand then. I do now. The first time I noticed the change was after killing the Weeper in that Louisiana church. Its dying words, "You're just like your mother," followed me into dreams where Lillian stood at the foot of my bed, a crying baby in her arms. I woke with my sheets soaked in salt water. The mirror showed the truth. Thin black veins creeping outward from my Enochian tattoos, my pupils slightly hexagonal in the dawn light. Malachi's journal, stolen from his trunk last winter, contained the real horror. Page after page, documenting the hollowing process, complete with sketches of previous Kaines in various stages of transformation. The final entry chilled me. Subject 17, Vera Kaine, progressing faster than anticipated. Dantalian's influence manifesting in stage 3 symptoms after only 12 kills. If pattern holds, full hollowing will occur by 72nd mark. Beneath it, a single line in different ink. Will she be the prison or the key? The family portrait lies. I found it in the ruins of our old home, buried beneath the scorched floorboards where my parents died. A standard 8x10, Mom, Dad, me, at age 6. Except someone had scratched out a section near my father's knee. The edges suggested another child, a third figure removed so thoroughly only ghostly traces remained. Malachi claims it's nothing, says trauma makes the mind see patterns where none exist. But the demon wearing Sophie's skin knew. And last night, my reflection told me the truth. "You weren't the first," it whispered as I traced the black veins now covering half my chest. "Just the one who survived." The end begins. Dantalian whispers to me in dreams now. Not the monster's true voice. That would drive me mad. But through my reflection, through the shadows that move just wrong at the edge of my vision. It shows me things. Liliane standing over a crib, a bone dagger in one hand, a squalling infant in the other, a Malachi in 19th century garb, performing the same ritual on another Kaine child. A door made of human teeth opening onto endless black. Last week, I found my mother's final letter hidden in the asylum's confession ledger. The ink was faded, the paper brittle, but her desperation bled through. Vera, if you're reading this, we failed, but you can end it. Burn our bodies, burn the bones, and when the time comes, the rest was illegible. But I know how it ends, because the thing wearing Father Mathis's skin told me all those years ago, you'll do great things, little shadow. And tonight, when I stare into the motel mirror, my reflection mouths the words I've been dreading. It's time. The bone dagger feels heavy in my hand. Malachi is sleeping down the hall, and the black veins have reached my heart. The first time I killed something that used to be human, I threw up in a Denny's bathroom for 45 minutes straight. Not very badass, I know. But here's the thing. They don't tell you about hunting monsters. The blood smells different when it's not quite human anymore. Richer, older, like opening a tomb that's been sealed since before your grandparents were born. That night at the Denny's outside Baton Rouge, I could still smell it on my hands, no matter how many times I scrubbed with that pink industrial soap. The waitress, Linda, according to her name tag, kept knocking on the door, asking if I was okay. I told her it was food poisoning. The lie came easier than I expected. That's the second thing they don't tell you. How natural lying becomes when the truth would get you locked up. Need me to call someone? Linda asked through the door. Her voice had that particular southern lilt that turns every sentence into a question. I stared at my reflection in the smudged mirror. The black veins around my left eye had receded some, but my pupils were still slightly hexagonal. Yeah, I said, splashing water on my face. But they're all dead. The God-flesh incident. The church calls them incorruptibles, saints whose bodies refuse to decay after death. Turns out, there's a reason for that, and it ain't holy. I found the first one in a traveling freak show outside Mobile. The banner proclaimed, "Miracle of the Saintly Child," in peeling gold letters. For $5, you could file past a glass coffin containing what looked like a perfectly preserved 12-year-old girl. Except her fingers were too long, and when I pressed my palm against the glass, the corpse's eyelids twitched. The carny running the show, a sweaty guy named Earl with meth scars on his arms, swore she'd been that way since 1923. Found her floating in the Mississippi after the Great Flood, he said, chewing tobacco. Ain't aged a day. I waited until midnight to crack open the coffin. Big mistake. The thing inside wasn't a saint. Wasn't even close. The moment the seal broke, its eyes snapped open. Black pools with tiny white hands swimming in them. Familiar hands. Keeper, it rasped in a voice like dry leaves crunching. Liliane sends her regards. Then it lunged. The fight only lasted 37 seconds. I know because I timed it on my watch, the silver one I took from my father's corpse. In that time, it broke 2 of my ribs with a casual backhand, tore a chunk out of my left thigh, whispered the exact words my mother said before she died. I killed it with a railroad spike through the throat. Not my most elegant work, but effective. As it died, the saintly flesh sloughed off like wet paper, revealing something skeletal and wrong beneath. The bones were rearranged, like someone had tried to build a human from memory and gotten it slightly wrong. The worst part? Inside the rib cage, nestled where the heart should be, was a small brass locket, engraved with a single word, Ambrose, my grandfather's name. Hive mind purgatory. Texas isn't on any maps. I found it by accident while chasing a lead on a skinwalker. 1 minute, I'm driving through perfectly normal desert. The next, I'm passing a crooked sign that reads, Purgatory, Poppy, 423, in peeling paint. The diner had 19 customers, all ordering the same thing, black coffee and apple pie, all watching me with identical blank stares, all breathing in perfect unison. The waitress's name tag said Dolores. Her smile showed too many teeth. "You're just in time for the celebration," she said, pouring coffee I hadn't ordered. The liquid smelled of rot and copper. The anniversary. I should have left. Should have burned the town to the ground and never looked back. But I'd seen that look in the cook's eyes, the desperate screaming terror behind the glassy compliance. Someone in there was still human. Turns out, the whole town was stuck in a time loop. June 17th, 1984, the day the mine collapsed, the day something crawled out. I found the source in the abandoned elementary school basement, a pulsing fleshy mass clinging to the walls like a cancerous spider web. The townsfolk were connected to it by thick umbilical cords of glistening tissue. It spoke with my father's voice. "You could stay, Vera. Just say yes. We could be together again." I torched the place with homemade napalm. As the flames spread, the thing started laughing, and laughing, and laughing. I still hear it sometimes in my dreams. The crying boy. They found the first body in the old Kaine family lake house. Drowned, lungs full of salt water, despite being 50 miles from the ocean. The victim, a 17-year-old boy, had clawed his own eyes out before he died. The sheriff called it a suicide. The second victim was my cousin Rachel. I arrived too late to save her, found her floating face down in the bathtub, her blonde hair fanning out like seaweed. The bathroom mirror was shattered. In the shards, I caught glimpses of a small boy in old-fashioned clothes, his face streaked with tears. The third time, I waited. Sat in that damn bathroom for 3 nights straight with a flask of whiskey and my father's old service revolver. On the stroke of midnight, the faucets turned on by themselves. Salt water poured out. The boy appeared in the mirror, maybe 6 years old, wearing a little sailor suit that might have been white once. His eyes were empty sockets, streaming with black tears. "Why did you leave me?" he whispered. Then I saw it, the birthmark on his wrist, the same one I have. The gun trembled in my hand. "Ambrose?" I whispered. His smile split his face in two. The bullet shattered the mirror. When the glass stopped falling, I was alone. The mother of tongues. Sophie wasn't lying. There is a cult. They meet in abandoned hospitals and old subway tunnels. They wear the skins of their victims like party dresses. And at the center of it all, her, the mother. I first saw her in a dream, sitting on a throne of gnawed bones, her face hidden behind a veil of human tongues. They twitched and whispered secrets as I approached. "You're late, little Kaine," she said, and her voice was every woman I've ever loved and lost. "Your brother's been waiting." Then she lifted her veil. I won't describe what I saw. Some things change you just by looking at them. But I will tell you this. When I woke up, my pillow was soaked with salt water, and my reflection wasn't mine anymore. The confession. Malachi found me bleeding out in a motel outside Phoenix. 3 ribs broken, left arm dislocated, a wound in my gut that should have killed me. He poured whiskey over the injuries before stitching me up. Didn't flinch when I screamed. "You're getting closer," he said, tying off the last suture. "Dantalion's waking." I spat blood on the floor. "Tell me about Ambrose." For the first time in all the years I've known him, the old bastard looked afraid. "He was your twin," Malachi whispered. "The first sacrifice. Liliane's doing." The room tilted. Memories that weren't mine flashed behind my eyes. A woman in a nun's habit singing a lullaby. A bone dagger glinting in candlelight. A child's scream cut abruptly short. When I came back to myself, Malachi was gone. Left behind was a single page from his journal, a crude drawing of a door made of teeth. Beneath it, 3 words. "She's coming, Vera." I checked the mirror. My reflection smiled back with Ambrose's empty eyes.